I'm Dana, and I've not been having the most fun in my personal day-to-day life. I say personal life, you hear a lot about my personal life on here, but I've just had a couple of things that have been really stressful and really not fun, and really, like, some of it's been quite hurtful, and I'm sure you'll probably hear about it eventually, but I don't want to share it for now because it's my personal life. And what I do when things aren't going very well for me and when I'm not feeling good is I self-isolate in a way that probably isn't the healthiest and fixate on media. I love TV shows, and to a degree, to a certain point, I love movies, but I like to be able to really sort of indulge myself in a lot of stuff going on. So I can get like an hour and a half, 2 hour movie, or I can get like 6 to 8 episodes that are all like 40 minutes long. So I lean towards TV shows. And I thought it'd be fun to do a little sort of like what I've been fixating on lately, what I've hyperfixated on for a brief period of time in the special interest that is just sort of TV shows. And 3 movies, a whole 3 films. This also totally works as a recommendation list. I've really enjoyed everything that I've watched lately. I've really curated my viewing experience quite well for myself. So I'm starting with Yellow Jackets because that was one that I was really looking forward to catching up on, and then I put it off for ages, and it sort of like kicked off me really enjoying TV shows again. So I watched season 1 back whenever that came out because it's got Melanie Lynskey in it, and she was in Heavenly Creatures, which is a Peter Jackson movie. So it all ties into my special interests. Just about everything on this list will tie back to Lord of the Rings or Doctor Who in some way. And then season 2 had Elijah Wood in it. I love him. He's such a great character in it as well. I will give a little rundown of what each thing's sort of like about, but I'm not trying to do too many spoilers, but I might also mention some parts that I especially enjoyed. But I'll try to keep it like relatively spoiler free. So Yellow Jackets is a football team. It's a sports team of girls in the 90s, 80s. I really paid attention, I swear. I wasn't just in it for Melanie Lynskey. But their plane crashes, they get stuck out in the wilderness, all sorts of fucking shit goes down, and it flashes between that going on and some modern day shit going down, and it's all very dramatic, and there's cannibalism, there's all sorts happening, and the characters are beautiful. 90% of what I go for in a show is the characters. It needs to be like good characterisation. I need to be able to not even necessarily relate, but they need to feel real, you know, they need to feel like real people that I would like, not even necessarily real people in the way that I would meet them, because I enjoy the odd fantasy thing or whatever, and it's like I'm not meeting an elf, but they need to feel like they're real enough that I could meet them, you know, they could be out there somewhere. And that was really provided with the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is Wolf on BBC. I saw the trailer for this maybe 2 months ago and was like, I can't wait for this to come out. I'm going to watch the shit out of that. So the thing that immediately pulled me in was that Sacha Dhawan's in it, and obviously I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. And for anyone that like actually listens to everything I say in videos, you'll remember that I watched Misfits a little while ago. So I was really excited that Ewan Ryan was in it. And then Owen Teale from Torchwood played the dad in it. And then Kai Owen was very briefly in it. And the guy that played the cop that like comes at the end was the guy that played Hannah's dad in Midget Cuckoos with Keely Hawes. So it was, BBC always does that shit for me. They even mention Doctor Who in the fucking show. Like Ewan Ryan's about to chop up a body and he's just like, do you want to talk about Doctor Who? And honestly, bitch, I do. I've been on the tour that he mentioned. But Wolf is a sort of like drama, thriller, crime type of thing where a family gets like, what's it called? You know, like in Strangers with Liv Tyler, God, when home invasion, they experience a home invasion and there's all sorts of plot twists, and I'm someone who tends to be able to pick up on twists really, really well. There's been a lot of things where people are like, oh, the twist though, and I'm like, what twist? Like I literally, like, I'll enjoy the plot, I'll enjoy everything about it, I just didn't notice that there was meant to be a plot twist because it wasn't a twist to me. And there's a lot of other times where I'm like, oh, I see what you're trying to set up for me, it's not going to be a twist. Whereas this like genuinely surprised me, and I'll give that some of it might be that I was very focused on Sacha Dhawan because frankly I love like a psychotic man, but it was a very, very good show. It was very, very well made. It ends kind of thing, it's like a limited series or whatever, there's not going to be any more, it doesn't need to be anymore, and it was just so fucking good. And there's some bits that are like genuinely like incredibly tense and suspenseful, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's sort of classic BBC fodder, like it's to a point, but like that's why I always enjoyed stuff on BBC. It's good for the most part, some of the time. And that took me into The Last Train, which is from the 90s, and I think that was actually on ITV, but it also had Sacha Dhawan in it, and it was also written by Matthew Graham, who wrote Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars, as well as multiple episodes of Doctor Who, and it was so fucking good. So this one is it's called The Last Train because there's all these people on a train, and this woman like sets off a like freezy bomb thing because she knows that the apocalypse is coming, and then they wake up in the future because they were like frozen safe, and apocalypse stuff goes down. We get Sacha Dhawan singing Wonderwall. We get the train was going between Manchester and Sheffield, so I'm not entirely sure if they're meant to be in between or in one of those cities. They probably did say. I don't pick up on that much on my first watch. I don't lie, that's why I watch things over and over and over and over to pick up on every little detail. I think I just sort of pick up on the wrong details on my first watch more so than not. Anyway, but there was a point where one of the characters found like an abandoned restaurant / cafe and went and sat down and was like, oh, White Luigi is what I'm having. And it properly just like gave me a giggle because I'm like, damn, like Matthew Graham really like cannot write anything without Luigi, huh? And it, like I say, it's from like 1998, 99, so it was before Ashes to Ashes, and we already had a Luigi. I just found it really fun. I love it when my TV shows like connect like that. The thing that took me out a bit though is that I'm very used to going back to watch things from the 90s to see the actors and musicians and general celebrities that I like in their prime, you know? Like, not to like shade like Gillian Anderson now, for example, or David Duchovny or Christopher Eccleston, but like, you see what I mean? Like, the majority of actors I like were sort of at their prime and getting the best. That's the thing, they weren't at their prime. The society registered them as such and thus gave them the best role during that time. They're still in their prime, and I will argue that actually. But going back and watching that and waiting and waiting and waiting for Sacha Dhawan and being like, is he even in it? And then realising that he was the fucking teenage boy in it. Like, I literally was like over halfway through the first episode. He'd been in it for like multiple times, and I didn't realise it was him because I was waiting for like cool, hot Sacha Dhawan to show up, and it was just this fucking kid. And it absolutely threw me. I'm like, oh, you're meant to be like at your peak in the 90s. Why are you a child? Like... But it was a really good show. And then I ended up watching Totally Completely Fine, which was just one that I found randomly when I was like scrolling through a random website and was like, fuck it. Like, it was like fairly late at night and I was like, I just want something I can binge for the next few hours. And it ended up like, it wasn't really good. Like, it wasn't amazing, but it was good and I enjoyed watching it. It's basically this like fairly young woman whose dad, uncle, someone died. But yeah, someone's died. She's got two older brothers that both see her as the fuck up, then everything's always her fault and they don't like her very much. And she gets her uncle's house, that's the dude who died, which happens to be on a cliff that loads of people try and launch themselves off, just yeet. God, I hated that. I'm the worst type of millennial, I think. But yeah, it's a cliff where loads of people are chucking themselves off, and she like steps in, takes on, unintentionally, the responsibility of being the person that goes out and talks them down from it. And... like, as much as I'm like, it wasn't the best thing ever, it wasn't amazing, there were a few bits in it that actually made me cry and like were really like emotionally impactful for me as someone who, you know, has two older brothers that don't like me and always see me as the fuck up and so on and so forth. And that's one of the things I really enjoy in media, is when it can like reflect on your life and it can make you feel something. So like, it was really great for that. And then I watched Teenage Euthanasia, and this is fucking brilliant. I have no idea how I've not heard other people talk about this. It's a cartoon, it's an animated show about a like woman that's a teen mom and dumps a baby on her mom to like fuck off and live it up. But then she dies, there's a whole thing. It's all, literally all of this is explained in the intro, by the way. And she requests that her body's sent back to the family funeral business, and that happens, and then her daughter like cries onto her and it brings her back to life, and her mum's a ghost / zombie thing that follows her around now. It honestly is probably my favourite animated show that I've watched since Daria. Like, it is so funny, it's so smart. I recognised voices in it. Natasha Demetriou, I feel like I've just butchered that saying. Natasha Natasha Demetriou, I feel like I've butchered that. How have I still not learned to say this bitch's name? Like, Natasha Demetriou is in it, and so is Kirsten Shaw. I really hate saying people's names. Like, I'm not sure I even just said her last name, it just felt like a sound. But they're both in it. I actually recognise both of their voices because I've got such bad What We Do in the Shadows brain rot that I finally recognise voices, but only of people in that show. Like, my mum used to phone me and be like, "Oh, you love, it's me," and I'd be like, "Who is this? I don't recognise your voice." But their voices I recognise now, and it's a hilarious show. It's quite a dark humour. Like, the joke that has stuck out to me the most was when, I mean, I'm not going to give you the context. The joke that just really stuck out was there's not very many Prince Charmings, but there's a lot of Prince Andrews, and I feel like that gives you a perfect vibe of the show, honestly. Then I watched Class of '07, which honestly probably the worst show on this list, but still good. I still enjoyed it. Emily Browning, I think is her name, the girl that played the original Violet Beauregard in this Series of Unfortunate Events movie that I grew up on and absolutely adored, which was what made me watch this. I also found out of Australian stuff. But yeah, Class of '07, a girl went on like the Bachelor type of thing, goes badly, so she like isolates herself and hangs out on her own, and then mad shit starts going off, so she goes to her old school because that's like the evacuation point, but her high school reunion's happening and loads of shit goes down, but it turns out that she was right and the apocalypse is happening and then they all end up stuck together. And I love like a little apocalypse survival drama type of thing, obviously, because this is like the third one on this list. But yeah, it was funny at moments. It had a few emotional points. There's a stoner duo, like there's these two women that are just like proper little stoner assholes, and they're just really fucking funny. Australians are just fucking funny anyway, to be fair. Yeah, like it wasn't like the most amazing award-winning thing you'll ever watch, but it was a fun little show to binge. And then I finally got round to Midwich Cuckoos, and I wanted to watch this when it was on, because it was like advertised on the sides of buses and everything, but it was while I was with my ex, and she had a whole thing where like she'd be like, "No, you're not allowed to watch films with Keely Hawes, and you're not allowed to watch Keely Hawes, like you love her more than you love me." And I could never figure out if it was a joke or if she actually didn't want me to watch anything with Keely Hawes in. Like, I could never figure it out because she made such a thing out of it, and it was really weird. So I finally got round to watching it, and it's the type of show that I know, like, I think it did maybe win some awards, and it's the type of thing I can imagine, like, lots of, like, critics reviewing really positively. I probably wouldn't have particularly enjoyed it or had it hold my attention if it weren't that Keely Hawes was in it. I was entirely there for my babe. Basically, there's, like, a blackout in a village, and all of the childbearing possible people end up pregnant, and all the kids are, like, weird. I don't want to give too much away because it was an interesting concept. It just wasn't really my cup of tea. It wasn't really one for me. It wasn't one that I would have chosen to watch on the synopsis alone, you know. But I also think that it was like very, very well written and very well made and a really interesting concept. Like, I feel like it's probably amongst the better things on this list, but it just wasn't a cup of, like, it didn't tickle me in the way that I wanted it to. Then I watched Steel Town Murders, which again just wasn't really my kind of thing. I only watched it because it had Philip Glenister in, and then I was really excited because a bunch of it was set with cops in 1973, and I was like, yes, Philip. And then he was the modern day cop with an awful moustache that made me not even find him attractive. But that was about, oh, actually, maybe I shouldn't have shot on it so much. That was about like real murders in Port Talbot. I mean, I'm not shitting on the actual girls. I mean, like, being mean about anything to do with any sort of true crime, I'm like, actually, maybe I'm being incredibly disrespectful, but I'm not. It just wasn't that good of a show, honestly. I think this was BBC again. Probably was because Philip Glenister's in it. But I absolutely would not have put up with it if it didn't have Philip in it. Like, I probably would have tried it, but I don't think I'd have lasted past the first episode at all. It was dull, long-winded. A lot of their accents aren't particularly good. They're all meant to be Welsh for the most part, and a lot of them just like didn't really nail it. Like, it was fine. It was fine. It was your average run-of-the-mill BBC, like, oh, we're going through two time perspectives for this real-life thing. Isn't that incredibly interesting? And I was like, yes, Philip Glenister is incredibly interesting. And the final show that I watched most recently was Interview with a Vampire. And you might be like, oh my god, Dana, did you only watch that after all this time because you finally realised that Jacob Anderson, who plays Louis in it, is the guy that played Vinder in Doctor Who? To which I would say, fuck off. It sent me down another whole like thing about my sexuality though, because I was like, I did not find that man attractive in Doctor Who. Like, I didn't think he was like ugly or anything, but I was just like, Vinder's cool, Vinder's great, I love Vinder. I wasn't like, Vinder's hot, you know? And then saw it in Interview with a Vampire, I was like, oh, it's Vinder, let's watch that. And I was like, oh, Vinder's cool. And then he fucked a man in it, and I was like, oh, he's fruity. Actually, he is quite attractive. So, says something about me there. But I've never engaged with any like Anne Rice Interview with a Vampire, any of that realm of things. Partly because I got really into Twilight and was like, I don't need your classic vampires, they look a bit goth for me, honestly. Like, I was never really into like the goth side of vampire stuff, you know. I think that's why I've like really latched onto What We Do in the Shadows, which isn't on this list because I've been watching it a long time, but I am also keeping up with the most recent season. But Interview with a Vampire, it's been an experience, because it turns out that like Anne Rice and this type of like this realm of vampire lore is one of my best friend's special interests. So I was like telling them about bits of the show and asking them about bits of the lore and the like, and I don't get the vibe that the show like is made for people that like Interview with a Vampire or Anne Rice at all, you know? Like, it really seems like it's not that at all. But as someone who didn't know what to expect from it and doesn't like, I've got the tape out so I can watch it, you can actually see it, there you go. I am going to watch the movie, but I just haven't got around to it yet. But like, I went into it with no expectations, no clue what it should be, and I really enjoyed it. I had an absolute fear that they were going to fuck Claudia. I was like, please do not do that. And instead, they just, you know, had her get raped as a 14-year-old, but they did choose to not show it, at least. Like, there's some choices they made for that show that I would not have made if I was working on it. But I also don't work on shows, and for the most part, I did enjoy it. However, this is the third thing I've watched where a vampire has taken his boyfriend flying and then fucking dropped him. What's that about? Please stop dropping the men that I like. Shit. So yeah, they're the TV shows that I've watched in the last like week and a half, 2 weeks. I know it sounds like something that should take a long time to watch. It hasn't. And then finally, the movies that I've watched were Bones and All, which I fucking loved. I think this might have been the first movie I've watched with Timothée Chalamet in, and it starts with a girl. God, I'm really bad at explaining things. It's a cannibal movie, but it's not cannibalism in the like, I'm a person and I feel like eating someone. It's a cannibalism movie where like the essentially like the lore in it is that some people are born and are hungry for fucking people, and like from even being a baby they will just eat fuckers and you can't help it, you can't stop it, you're just hungry for humans. And that was extremely interesting, and they made it into sort of like romance with an element of travel and like fun teenage young adult stuff, abandonment, cannibalism, body gore, like body horror and gore, and it's difficult to describe, but I really enjoyed it. I will probably watch it again at some point. Then I watched Fresh, and the first 25 minutes I was like, I get it, like I like this type of movie, but I've got me, I like to recline and lean on my desk and shit, but it's making the camera shake. But yeah, so I went into it and I was like, I know what to expect from this, I see what you're doing, like, yeah, let's go for it. And none of the twists were like mind-blowing twists, but there were a few things where I was like, oh cool, you know, and I don't have that reaction all that often. I tend to know what's coming up. But yeah, basically, girl goes on date with Sebastian Stan, is that his name? Stan doesn't feel like a last name. Bucky Barnes, that dude. Is his name Sebastian Stan? Please answer in 2 to 3 weeks when I finally edit and upload this video. But I think that's his name. Kidnaps a bitch. There's cannibalism. There's all sorts of little bits. It's very modern, realistic, very... Yeah, it's realistic horror. Were there any moments of gore? I think there were a couple moments where I was like, oh! I want to mention that actually, like, sorry to rewind for a moment, there was a bit, no, it's just a spoiler. That's just a spoiler, you're alright. And finally, I watched Journeyman, which is about a boxer who wins a fight but gets like brain damage from the fight, and his like recovery and figuring himself back out again. And you might be thinking, Dana, Christ, why did you watch a film about a boxer? Was his wife by any chance played by Jodie Whittaker? It was horrible though, because I spent the first half of the film being like, I recognise that man. Like Paddy Constantine? Grasp it from what I just said if you can. But I was like, I recognise him. And when I went on his Wikipedia, I was like, he's in like Hot Fuzz and House of the Dragon. I don't know why I said House of the Dragon, that's not actually something I've seen. But he was in like Hot Fuzz and a couple of other movies that I have watched. And I was like, I don't remember you in these. You know, like normally when I recognise an actor, I'll like read the thing that they were in that I recognise them from, and I get the picture in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember exactly who you were, and I just couldn't place it. And I was like, oh, I guess he was just. Maybe it's because I I was rationalising it and being like, I guess it's just this. And then halfway through I realised that I recognised him because I made quite awkward and prolonged eye contact with him at Comic-Con, like the last Comic-Con I was at, because with being in House of the Dragon, he was sat next to Matt Smith, and I really wanted to like look at Matt Smith before meeting him so that I might not freak out so much. So I was like trying real hard to get a glimpse around people at Matt Smith, but then I made eye contact with the man sat at the table, and I was like, oh shit, I've made eye contact with him and he's not looking away from me. Normally celebrities look away and I'm still making eye contact with this guy, and oh shit, Matt Smith's there. And that's why I recognise Paddy Constantine. But yeah, that's what I've been watching lately. There's a few other things sprinkled in because I always rewatch, like I'm always on a rewatch of Doctor Who, I'm always rewatching bits of What We Do in the Shadows, I'm always just grabbing random episodes of Our Flag Means Death because they make me feel better. But these are like fresh things that I've watched and like fixated on very intensely while I was watching it, and then been like, I'm over it now. Although, as I say, I think Interview with a Vampire might be a more prolonged thing now. It seems like it's gonna be. My mouth is so dry after that. I feel like I've spoken like excessively in this video, like even more so than usual. But yeah, you've heard a lot there about what I enjoy and what kind of shows I like, and you've heard a lot about me. So if you've got any recommendations, I would actually really appreciate them, and we'll probably watch them and mention them at some point. But for now, I have more than had enough of listening to my own voice, and I'm sure you have too. So please do like and subscribe if you'd like to. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter or TikTok. It'll all be linked down below. You can become a YouTube member, and you can also, if you would like to, donate money to me on Patreon and Ko-fi, but you don't have to. There's never any pressure. We're all fucking poor. So whoever you are, wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, we love you. And I will see you again in a couple of days.